What is happening, y'all? This is Setting 101, and essentially want to give you some of the foundational frameworks to support you in becoming the top setter on your team and just setting deals consistently. And so I'm really excited to share this with you. If you don't know who I am, my name is Alexander Riker, and I've been in high ticket sales over the last 10 years and started out as a setter, okay? That skill has served me so well, and it literally is probably the most valuable skill. I think just as important as closing, right? Because if you ever want to start your own business, if you ever want to never have to worry about money again, then you got to know how to generate leads. You got to know how to generate interest. You got to know how to be able to set a lot of calls to close deals, right? And so a lot of closers shy away from setting. In fact, a lot of closers are very weak when it comes to setting, and they're prima donnas in that way. Whereas myself, I actually love setting. I think it's, like I said, the most valuable skill. But I started out having to set every single one of my own deals, right? I didn't have any leads. I didn't have, a whole CRM full of people interested in potentially working together. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have a marketing engine. I literally had to go into the ether and generate my own deals out in the world, out through social media, right? And so each lead that I got was so precious and so valuable because I knew what it took to get it, that I never wanted to waste the opportunity. And so I've been able to go from setting to closing to essentially one of the top 1% reps in the game, and then being able to lead multiple 8-figure sales teams. And so what I want to do in this video essentially is share with you some of the things that I share with my private clients. I normally work with closers, but occasionally I'll take on a few setters. And these things I'm about to walk you through are essentially the very first things that I cover with my clients, who are setters. And so the goal here is really to condense 10 years of hard-earned lessons, right, into however short this video will be. So that can save you a lot of time. You can get really good really fast, and it'll cover the basics and the foundations, which if you look at someone like Michael Jordan, right, everyone remembers him for game-winning shots, yet what made him the GOAT was actually the basics. And so if we master the basics, we will never have to worry about money again. You'll be able to get all the best leads. You'll be able to set with any closer that you want, right? And all the closers will want to close your deals because of who you are, right? So I'm going to share with you 5 things to set well. And I'm really excited to share these with you. And I put them in a Google Doc, a little bit different format for this video. But if you want to take notes, feel free to do so. And let's go ahead and dive in, okay? So 5 things to set well. Number 1 is set to close. Okay, so usually when you join a company as a setter, they'll usually give you 3 things, right? You got to do $100 a day. You got to do this amount of sets per day, or you need to have this many contacts, right? And so it can be really easy to focus on those things and be like, I'm doing my job, right? I'm doing my job. I'm doing all the volume. And yet, if we're not closing any deals, it does not matter, right? When I was leading an 8-figure sales team over the last year and a half or so, at one point we had a challenge where all the setters were setting a lot of calls, but they weren't necessarily closing. And when we looked into it, it came down to really the setters focusing so much on setting, right? Just set, 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 and not enough on setting to close. And so recently I was on a call with one of my clients, Lynn, who is a setter. And, she had no setting experience at all, and came into this space. I happened to speak with her right as she got on actually a really good offer for setting. Well, really, it's just a good offer in general, but it was a great setting offer too. And so it was really her time to like maximize it and juice it and make sure that it worked, because if she did, she'd have a great track record, and she can make really good money, never have to work at a restaurant again. and really start to pave her way into the high ticket sales space. So we decided to work together. She hired me to work with her. I thought she'd be a great client, so I took her on. And within 2.5 weeks, she had collected $93,000 cash for the company, right? And so she gets a 5% commission payout on that, which is pretty solid to be brand new to the game and essentially immediately replacing a full-time income within 2.5 weeks, right? And so the reason I share that with you is because in the beginning, and she'd be totally cool if I shared this, but in the beginning, she was like, "Oh my God, all I have to do is just, dial this many people and I'm good." Or she was freaked out about maybe not being able to hit the volume. And I asked her one question. I said, "Hey, let me ask you this. If you had 0 dials in a day, 0 contacts, and yet somehow, some way, magically, you had 10 sales, would they care about your initial volume?" It's like, no. It's like, exactly. The only thing that really matters in this game of sales is closing deals. That's it. That's the only thing that matters. And so the reason I'm starting here, even though it's more of a mindset thing, is because everything that we want to do as a setter is orient around setting to close. We want to get really good at our activity, our energy going in, and it leading to results, to sales, right? And it doesn't matter how much activity we do. The only thing that matters is us getting the result. And you'll hear a lot of people maybe share differently, but again, just follow the logic. If you made 10 sales without 0 activity, who cares how you got them, right? The only thing that matters is sales. And so what we want to do is start to adopt a mindset of setting to close. And that's the things that I'm really going to be sharing with you here. So moving on to the river of abundance. So this is a metaphor and analogy of thinking about, okay, well, how do I get really, really good at setting to close? And this is a metaphor that I shared with one of the SDRs on my last team. And she was also relatively new. She was in fulfillment, and then they were like cutting the fulfillment team, so they offered her to become a setter. And so she was kind of new to it, but she knew the product. And so I shared with her this understanding of the game, and it helped her out a lot. So, and it helped me out a lot too. So, the way that you want to think about this game is that sales is like a river, right? And so it's flowing from a top of a mountain all the way down to the ocean, and the ocean is your bank account. All right. So just follow me here for a second. Leads are the source of the river, right? It's coming out of, the mountain at the top, and it becomes a waterfall, and those are the leads, right? And then our sales process is the river. And so as the river flows down the mountain, sometimes there's trees that fall. Sometimes there's dams that were built by beavers, right? Or maybe a landslide happened and it's blocking the flow. Your pipeline and your sales process essentially is this river. And so what we want to do is solve the bottlenecks of the river. We want to get the trees out of the way. We want to clear out the dams, and we want to have this thing just be a nice, seamless flow of money straight into your bank account. And so if you look at your numbers, right, if you're on a team and they have a numbers tracker, that essentially is the river. And so you can see where you're really good and maybe where there's some opportunity for improvement. And essentially how we want to approach this is solving one constraint at a time. So the first thing is source, right? Leads, which the company's taking care of if you're in a setting role, hopefully, right? You have plenty of leads to work with, or maybe they give you a set amount of leads per day or a week, right? That's the source. And then after that, we have dials, then we have contacts, then we have sets, then we have sales, right? And so at each one of those steps, there's a certain bank of knowledge of what works, what doesn't, that will allow that river to flow. And so initially it's volume, right? It's just simply getting volume through to see what works, right? And then you're having enough calls, and maybe you're setting a bunch, but they're not showing up. So then the bottleneck or the constraint would be show rate, right? So then it's like, okay, well, how can we set in a way for them to show? And then maybe you're setting a bunch and they're showing, but they're not quite closing. It's like, okay, well, then that becomes a constraint. And so if we solve each constraint, focusing on one at a time, over time, you're going to be able to essentially know beyond a shadow of a doubt, here's how I set 5 deals a day and know that 3 of them will close, 2 of them will close, right? And really what you want is a 1-to-1 ratio, right? You set someone and they close. And so I've done a whole training with my past team on set to close that hopefully I can get access to and share with you here on the channel. But that is the idea here is we want to set to close and we want to solve one constraint in our pipeline at a time. Okay. And so the following things will support with that. And perhaps I'll do more videos down the road to get there. Most of this channel is for closers, but I also want to cover the setting stuff as it's been showing up, and I think there's a need for it. So levers. Let's start to get into some tactical stuff. One of the biggest needle movers in your results as a setter is lead priority. Okay. Not all leads are created equal. And it would serve us well to dial the most valuable leads first, right? Or contact the most valuable leads first down to the least valuable. And so we want to prioritize our leads where we are spending our effort, our precious time and energy towards the leads that have the highest odds of closing, right? Because we only have so much time in a day. And so a lot of setters are just, again, focused on just hitting activity numbers. That's not it. And we'll get more into that in a second. But it's also knowing that if you simply contact the right leads, you're going to have way higher odds and percentages of getting them to answer and for them to set and for them to go on to close. So really prioritizing the right leads, really the best offers like my client Lynn is on, they'll do this for you. They'll literally prioritize the leads for you. So if you want to know to what extent of an offer you're on and how good it is, are they giving you prioritized leads? That will be a good indicator. But let's say they are, right? Or they aren't. How do you go about that yourself? Well, these are really the 3 elements of a quality lead, right? Recency. So basically, how recent did they opt in for the training or for the webinar or whatever, right? The more recent they are, the hotter they are, you'll dial them and they'll remember what you're even calling about, right? So recency is huge. Engagement is how much time have they spent going through our stuff? How well do they know, like, and trust the company, right? Have they been following the owner for a long time? Have they watched the webinar in full, or did they just watch it for 2 minutes? Have they consumed anything? And do they have no idea who we are? Right? It's going to be a little bit tougher to set someone like that. It can still be done 100%. And again, prioritizing the leads. And then last one is financials. There's a lot of softwares out there that will essentially allow you to qualify people's credit score with just an email, which is pretty crazy. But you don't necessarily need that. This one is usually through applications. Like if people book a call but don't show and you're following up on that lead to get them to book, you can look at their application answers and you'll be able to tell if they can invest or not. But the idea is essentially they're super recent, they've engaged a bunch, and they're qualified financially. Those are the most valuable leads. You want to start there, prioritize the list, and then work your way down. Okay, so that's a huge needle mover, super tactical to increase your results. Next is volume, right? Simply just doing more, doing enough to get a result. There's something, I forget the exact term for it. My sister is a statistics teacher, but there's something called significant data or something like that. And essentially, it's that you need enough volume to really know what works and what doesn't. So if you're only doing $50 a day, that's not enough, right? And if you're struggling to do dials and have the energy to do it, we'll get into that in the next bit. But you need at minimum 100 dials a day, absolute minimum. And it's not just dials. You can also send texts. You can also send emails, right? There's many ways to go about setting calls. But in short, if you want more sets, do more volume, right? And then last but not least is copy, which essentially is what is in those texts and emails, right? What are you saying when someone answers the phone? And really honing in those things are really big needle movers as well, because you might be doing enough volume, right? With volume alone, you should be able to get something, but copy is essentially getting more yield out of the same energy and effort, right? So that's really what we're going for is, we dial 100 and we get 5 sets. We send 100 emails and we get 5 emails or 5 sets, right? So those are really your levers. So as we're starting to go through this, right, you might start to become aware of some things like, man, I'm just setting to set. I'm not actually setting to close. And, imagine getting so good at setting that even if you set with the worst closer in the world, you set the client so well that they buy anyways, right? That's what's in our control. And it's so easy to blame the closers when they should have closed someone that we thought should have closed. But if we're taking extreme ownership, we want to get so good at setting that they'll close even if we're setting them with the worst closer on the team, right? Radical idea, I know, but that's how we get really, really good. So becoming aware of that, becoming aware of where's your bottleneck in your pipeline, focusing there, solving it, and then levers is really what some of those may be. Are we prioritizing leads, right? Are we doing enough volume? Is our copy the most effective that it could be? Do we have friends who are copywriters? Can we hit up the marketing team and have them optimize the copy that we're sending, right? These are some really tactical things to increase results. All right. Now, the next one is execution. All right. I want to share with you something that absolutely changed my life, and it's called 50-10s. So I remember pretty early on in my journey, one of my friends lived in what's called an entrepreneur house, right? So they had this fat house, and there were, I think, 5 guys that lived there, and one girl. I was like 4 guys, 4 girls, 1 girl, and they all had their own businesses. They had a chef, they had a cleaner, they had a really dope setup. And I actually went on to create couple entrepreneur houses myself. Um, but I remember that I went to go visit him. We were going to workshop something, and I pull up to the house. He was on a call, so the garage was open. So I walk into the garage, and there's an R8 in the garage. If you like sports cars, R8's a dope car. There's an R8 in the garage, and the female entrepreneur was in there. And she said, "Oh yeah, your buddy's on a call right now, but do you want to get a 50-10 in?" And I was like, "What's a 50-10?" And she's like, "Oh, you work for 50 minutes and then you chat for 10, right? Or then you rest for 10." She was like, your brain, the human brain can only focus effectively for about 50 to 90 minutes at a time before there's diminishing returns. And it's a really great way to make co-working productive, right? Because you set a timer, you declare what you're each doing, and then you get it done. And I was like, yeah, sounds great. So I did that, and that literally has changed my life in a productivity level, because we declare what we're going to do, we set a timer, we know there's a end date to our work, so we got to get it done by then. It makes the work more energizing, and it will allow you to focus better, right? You'll have more energy throughout the day. So 50-10s is essentially working in 50s or 90s. Early on in the day, you can do 90s, set a 90-minute timer. But this is one of the things that really helped Lynn crush it out of the gate. And this was obviously, it worked very well for myself as well. But it's really turning it into a game. All right? Before you get into your work, before you even start the timer, what you want to do is set an intention to set a certain amount of people that day, right? All right, let me set an intention that in this next 50, I'm going to set one person, right? Let me see if I can set one person by the end of this 50. And you turn it into a game, and it becomes more exciting. It becomes more fun. It becomes more light, and it brings more energy to setting, right? I shared this with a guy, with one of my past clients. His name's Nicholas, and he was on a setting team, and he was doing all right. I think it wasn't anything crazy, but he was doing all right. And the owner of that team had just raised the standard almost by double, right, of like the minimum required to be on the team. And so he hits me up. He's like, "Dude, I literally don't know if I can hit that number. Like, it's almost unfair. Like, it makes me want to quit. I really like this company. I don't want to, but yeah, it's just like, I don't know what to do. Can you help? And so what I shared with him is the power of energy and the power of intentions and the power of working in 50s and 90s, right? And said, when you're dialing, are you just going through the motions, right? Are you just dialing, all right, next, all right, next, all right, next, right? Or are you dialing with intent, right? Intent to find the person who you're meant to speak with, that you can serve, and like you're on your toes, ready and waiting for that person to answer, so you can be sharp, go in there, and boom, set that person so that they close. He was like, more the first. I was like, okay, cool. So let's start setting intentions, right? Let's turn this into a game. Let's set intentions. How many are we gonna set today? That close, right? We're gonna set to close, and then let's play a game on how many sets we can get. True story. That very next day, he is doing this exact thing that I'm sharing with you, ends up calling a whale, which is like, a big client for the back end offer. And the whale tells him, yo, I don't need you to, send me anyone else. Like, I'm ready to buy. Can you just take payment? Closed a 35K deal right then and there, right? Super powerful energy and intentions, and working in 50s and 90s. So there's that. You probably already know this one, but it's worth putting in there. Double dialing and then text, right? If they don't answer the first time, call them again. If they don't answer, then I don't think voicemails really work in today's world, so it's better to send a text. I might do a video in the future around written persuasion and copy, right? How to send text that slap and get a response. But in short, double dial then text, and we covered turning it into a game. Okay, so that's really the execution standpoint, right? So locking in, focus on building momentum. This whole game is about momentum. We want to get enough momentum to absolutely crush it, right? And we do that through 50s and 10s, and then you start to move up the chain, right? Get on from maybe the outbound team to the inbound team, and really match the game of setting, so that, again, if you ever have your own offer, you want to become a closer, you never have to worry about lead gen because you know how to do it. Next, having a call flow. All right, so I'm not going to go in super detail with this, but what you want to do is have a flow for your calls, not a script. I'm not the biggest fan of scripts because they're inauthentic and robotic. You can train them for sure so that it just becomes muscle memory. But what you really want is a flow, right? A flow, big rocks that you check off in order, a sequence that you follow in each call. So when someone answers, you're taking them through the flow. And you want a flow, that way you can adapt as you go throughout it, but you also are covering the big essential rocks. And you can adapt this and make it to whatever it is for you. But literally with Lynn, I had her write down, all right, what do you think the 5 things are to cover in each call, right? And I wasn't even attached to what she put in there. I just wanted her to have something so that she can just start to train the muscle of following the flow. Obviously, we went on to role play it, hone it in, get it, super sharp. But having 5 steps for your call, you can put it on a note card that's next to your desk. And then anytime anyone answers, you follow the flow, right? You take them through the sequence of steps that leads to a set. And so an example of that could be intro, goals, challenge, why now, and then pitch, right? So something like that, you can make your own, but you really want to have a flow more than a script. I can't emphasize that enough, right? People's buying defenses are higher than ever, right? Almost everyone's been marketed to. So we want to be really, really sharp in our process. Maybe I'll cover that in a future video. But the biggest hack that I can share on your flow is in your intro, right? Most of the calls are predicated on how well the intro is, right? There's a lot of other pieces for sure, don't get me wrong. So maybe that's a, exaggeration. But if you don't get past the intro, you don't have a call. So the most tactical thing I could share with you is to actually write down and get really clear on what is the end result that your offer communicates, right? That really is what your offer does. So for example, Lynn was on a crypto offer. She still is on a crypto offer. And so, she was leading the calls with like, hey, so-and-so, this is Lynn. you opted in for, crypto training. Does that ring a bell? Well, crypto in and of itself is just the vehicle, but it's like, what is that actually doing? Well, it allows them to invest in crypto. Sure, but why would you invest in crypto? To grow your portfolio. Okay, well, why would you grow your portfolio? Right? So that you can have more money, right? So what we did is change it from you recently opted in for a crypto training to you recently opted in about a high growth investment with low risk. Does that ring a bell? Right? So we're leading with the actual outcome, the result, the result, the result. That is what they want most, right? It's not about crypto. It's about having a high growth portfolio with low risk so that they can retire early, so that they can make money passively, so that they don't have to work into old age, right? You want to get really clear on that, hone in your intro, and you'll have far more people being open to connecting. Last but not least, just as a bonus, I said 5 things, want to over deliver. For show rate, one of the best things that you can do at the very end when you're booking the call, right? Just ask this one question, works like a charm. Literally, it's game changer for show rate. But let's say you book them in, you can just say, hey, question, or, I don't know, I'm just like, I was in a different flow than necessarily role play. But at the end of the call, right, you can just ask them as you're booking the call, awesome, so that time works for you? Yes? Cool. Do you see any reason why you wouldn't show up to that call? Or do you see anything that would prevent you from showing up to that call tomorrow at 3 p.m. with John? No, I don't. Okay, great, right? And then if anything tries to come up, they think to themselves, damn, I already told him or already told her, right, that nothing would prevent me. So they block that out and they show up, right? I got that from a random sales training guy that I met like maybe 8 years ago in a coffee shop, and it was really solid stuff. So, do you see anything that would prevent you from showing up on the call tomorrow at 3 p.m.? No, great, love it. Commitment, consistency, one of the cognitive biases. So, this is setting 101, right? So I know we covered a lot there. Would love to have you maybe capture your notes and be like, what is 3 things off of what we covered that you can implement this week so that you can set to close and hit more of your income goals, match the game of high ticket sales, and essentially learn the number 1 skill, I believe, in the world, which is setting as well as closing. So really good stuff. Appreciate you so much. And I'll see you in the next one.